Hello guys, Combat Critic here. In this video, I want to give my pick on this fight between Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo, who's coming out of retirement. This fight is scheduled at UFC 288. So let's get started. First, we have Aljamain Sterling and Henry Cejudo. Aljamain Sterling, a lot of people don't really think he's a champion, and Henry Cejudo has been C3 in the UFC, the bantamweight champion, flyweight champion and Olympic champion. So let's get started. First, we have the odds for this fight. So these are the opening odds from betonline.ag. Aljamain Sterling is a slight favorite in this fight at -120 and Henry Cejudo is a slight underdog at +100. I think this is because Henry Cejudo has not been active recently. Last time he fought was in 2020 against Dominic Cruz, whereas Sterling has been more active in recent times, so there is this recency bias. That is what we are seeing in these odds. Now let's get started with some of the statistics. First up, we have Aljamain Sterling. Height is 5 feet 7 inches compared to 5 feet 4 inches for Henry. So Aljo has a 3-inch height advantage. Weight is 135 pounds for Aljamain and 130 for Henry. So both are pretty even, but I'll say Aljamain Sterling balloons up to 155 on the day of the fight, whereas Henry Cejudo has previously fought at 125 also, so I'll think on the day of the fight he won't be that big. So again, I give the weight advantage to Aljamain as well. I know he is close to 165 pounds off season. Let's talk about the reach now. 71 inches reach for Aljamain Sterling and 64-inch reach for Henry Cejudo. So a huge 7-inch reach advantage for Aljamain, which is huge. Both guys are orthodox stance fighters, and in terms of the age, Aljamain is a little younger than Henry. Now let's talk about some of the striking statistics of these two guys. The strikes landed per minute, which is the number of significant strikes that you land on your opponent per minute on average, is 4.7 for Aljamain Sterling compared to 3.92 for Henry Cejudo. So advantage for Aljo. Let's talk about striking accuracy. 51% for Aljamain compared to 45% for Henry. So again an advantage for Aljo. Strikes absorbed per minute, which is the number of significant strikes that you absorb from your opponent on average per minute, is 2.18 compared to 2.77. So again, Aljo hits a lot more and gets hit a lot less. So again, advantage for Aljo. Now let's talk about striking defense numbers. 61% for Aljo compared to 65% for Henry. So a slight advantage to Henry, even though both guys are pretty even. Now let's talk about the wrestling, grappling and submissions. Takedown average is 1.98 for Aljamain Sterling and 2.12 for Henry. So advantage for Henry. Next we talk about takedown accuracy, 24% compared to 33% for Henry. So again advantage for Henry. Now let's talk about the takedown defense. 41% for Aljamain Sterling compared to 93% for Henry Cejudo. So we know Henry is an Olympic wrestler. He won gold in the 2008 Beijing Olympics. He represented USA and is the youngest athlete from USA to win a gold in the wrestling Olympics. He was 20 years old when he won the gold medal. So wrestling is pretty solid for Henry Cejudo. I don't think Aljo will take him to the ground because he only has a 24% takedown accuracy, whereas Henry has a 93% takedown defense. Let's talk about the submission average, 0.9 for Aljamain Sterling compared to 0.2 for Henry. So we know that Aljo is a ground game guy, so he will have an advantage if the fight goes to the ground. Whether it will go to the ground, whether Aljamain will be able to take down Henry Cejudo is a different question, and I don't think so because 93% takedown defense compared to 24% takedown accuracy. Now let's talk about the records of these two guys. Aljamain Sterling has fought in 25 fights. He's won 22 of them and lost 3 of them. 3 of those wins were by knockout, 8 by submission, 10 by decision and 1 by DQ. This was against Peter Yan in their first fight. Speaking of losses, Aljamain Sterling has been knocked out once by Marlon Moraes by a flying knee. Submission losses 0, 2 losses by decision. Now let's talk about Henry Cejudo. In 18 fights, he's won 16 of them and lost just 2. By knockout 8 wins, by decision 8 wins. By knockout 1 loss, and by decision 1 loss. So we see that whenever Henry wins, it's either a knockout or a decision, and no submissions. Henry has never never won a fight using submission. Whereas if you talk about Aljo, so he wins by submissions and decisions. He usually does not win by knockout. So even though we see that Aljo is better on the feet, but Henry has more power as he has more knockouts. And on the ground, submissions heavily favor Aljamain over Henry. Now moving on, let's see some of the past performances of these two fighters. Speaking of Aljamain, in his last fight, he TKO'd TJ Dillashaw in the second round. TJ actually came in injured in this fight. His shoulder popped out during the fight. So a lot of people don't give credit to Aljo for this win, even though I think that he won and he did a good job. In the first round, Aljo took TJ's back and he could not finish him, even though he is a great submission artist. I think in recent times he is trying to improve on his striking, so that is why his grappling is lagging behind now. Before this fight, he won a split decision against Peter Yan. This was a 5-round fight, and this was also a controversial split decision. Before that, he won against Peter Yan due to an illegal knee that Yan landed on Aljo. He was actually losing this fight, but then the illegal knee happened and he won the fight. Before that, he won in the first round against Corey Sandhagen, which was a submission via rear naked choke. Before that, he won a unanimous decision against Pedro Munoz in a 3-round fight, and Jimmy Rivera again unanimous decision 3-round fight. Cody Stemmen, he submitted in the second round via slow stretch. So this is a pretty good submission. And before that, he won a unanimous decision against Brett Jones in a 3-round fight. So if you look at Aljo's overall record, the last 3 performances have been a little shady, in the sense that a lot of people think Aljo shouldn't have won these fights, but due to circumstances like TJ coming in injured for this fight or Peter Yan landing the illegal knee, Aljo won those fights. However, I think Aljo is still a strong guy because he finished Corey Sandhagen, who's a really good fighter at 135 pounds in the first round, and he also beat Peter Yan via split decision. So this was a 5-round hard fight against a very tough opponent in Peter Yan. Now let's talk about Henry Cejudo, Triple C. His last fight was back in 2020, where he TKO'd Dominic Cruz in the second round via knees and punches. Before that, he TKO'd Marlon Moraes in the third round, and before that, TJ Dillashaw TKO in the first round itself, and before that, a split decision win over Demetrius Johnson, who many people think as the GOAT in mixed martial arts. This was a hard 5-round fight. Before that, he beat Sergio Pettis via unanimous decision in a 3-round fight, and Wilson Reyes he TKO'd in the second round. So if you look at Henry's record, he has TKO'd Dominic Cruz, Marlon Moraes and TJ Dillashaw. A split decision over Demetrius Johnson, which is controversial. A lot of people think that DJ should have won the fight. And Sergio Pettis and Wilson Reyes win. So overall, if we look at their records, I think Aljo having a record of 22-3 and Henry having a record of 16-2. So Aljo has more experience overall in MMA, whereas Henry has more experience in wrestling. However, in recent times, we see that he has fallen in love with his hands. He is TKOing people in the last 3 fights and not using his wrestling much in the recent times, whereas Aljo has one fight via submissions in 2020. In this fight, he got the back of Peter Yan but couldn't finish him, unfortunately. In this fight also, in the first round, he had TJ Dillashaw on the ground, but he could not finish him. So if I think that can Aljamain take down Henry Cejudo and finish him via sub, I don't think so. Can Henry shoot for a takedown and ground and pound Aljamain. I also don't think that will happen because Henry is more of a striker. He doesn't like to shoot much, and even if he shoots, then he falls in the trap of Aljamain's ground game, which is like his submission skills are better than Henry's. So I think this will be a striking battle, and in striking we have seen that it favors Aljamain Sterling in the strikes landed per minute, striking accuracy, and strikes absorbed per minute department. So because of that, I think the odds are also tilted slightly in Aljo's favor because of this reason. So if you ask my money, if you ask my picks and who do I want to put my money on in this fight, I will choose the winner, Aljamain Sterling. I think this will be a 5-round decision win for Aljo. I don't think he'll be able to finish Henry Cejudo, but he'll win because first of all, he's been more busy. He's been busier in recent times, and he's a younger fighter. He has a better, well-rounded game where he can also submit you and he can also knock you out. He can also win decisions. And Henry, I think, has fallen in love with his hands in recent times. Because of these things, I'm picking Aljo to win in this fight. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll see you guys in the next video.